One of my favourite modulation effects is the phaser. And a phaser works in a very similar way to a flanger in that its effect is achieved by phase shifting a delayed signal. However, the phaser generally has multiple phase shifted signals, all at delayed intervals, and this is what gives it its characteristic tone. Let's take a look at the small stone phaser made by Electro-Harmonix. Over the years there's been a few different models of the small stone, and they don't all look the same as this one, but this particular model is the American-made model. It features true bypass, which means when the pedal is off, the dry signal is not coloured at all by the pedal. It also has a rate control, and this is similar to the choruses and the flanges that we're talking about. The rate basically controls the speed of the modulation, so got it running fairly slow there. I'll just speed it up somewhat. So you can get quite warbly tones. That's actually not even up full. I'll turn it up to full. So that's at its highest rate. The colour switch allows you to change the depth, which in turn changes the colour. It turns into a much fatter tone when you turn it on because the depth is deeper. So when I'm using this particular pedal, I generally like shallow colour with a slow rate when I'm playing clean, funky stuff. However, when I'm using it with a dirty preamp, I'll just switch to my heavy tone. I like generally a same slow rate, but with the depth switch engaged, so it gives me a much fatter tone. So that's the Small Stone by Electro-Harmonix. In the early 70s, the MXR company came out with the Phase 90 pedal. And anyone who's familiar with the Van Halen song Eruption will be familiar with the tone of this pedal. It's a very classic sounding phaser with very easy operation in that it just has a single speed control. Now, like the other phaser pedals and flanger pedals that we've seen, the speed basically adjusts the modulation speed. So it's quite slow. So at the moment I'm just using a clean tone, so setting the rate fairly slow. It's good for good clean funk. Using the same speed, even dirty tones sound really great as well. So in recent years, the Jim Dunlop company has actually begun licensing the original MXR pedals, and this particular one I have here is a Edward Van Halen signature series, as you can tell by the funky paint job. The original MXR Phase 90s that came out just had a script logo, so the text of the MXR wording was done in script text. This particular pedal has a little button up the top here that basically allows you to select the sound of the original script Phase 90, which actually isn't that much different to the Edward Van Halen one, which may have been modded over the years. But I'll just play you the difference between the two. So it's a very subtle difference, but it's a great sounding pedal, very classic phase sound, and I would say it's probably one of the favourite of mine. Just for a moment, I want to revisit the MM4 modulation modeler by Line 6, and the reason is that a lot of more modern day phases have begun to have different functionality. And this particular pedal has 3 different phase models, including the Phase 90 that we looked at. There's also a Mutron biphase and the Ibanez flying pan, which were a couple of other classic phases. Now, at the moment, the way I've got this particular pedal set up with the depth, the mix and the speed is based on the classic Phase 90 settings. So if I just play with that. So sounds like a classic Phase 90 pedal. But it also has a couple of other controls, and you'll note that some other multi-effects pedals will also have additional controls for the phaser. This one has the mix control, which allows you to adjust how much of the phaser is in the mix. So basically, at the moment, I'll just turn the speed down slightly. So obviously a minimum setting is basically no phase in the mix. As I turn the mix control up, I'm getting all the phaser in the mix. Also, this pedal has a resonance control as well. So the tweak button on the modeler here allows me to add more resonance, which is basically how much of the signal is fed back into itself in the same way as we saw in the flanger. So aside from a tweak control that adds more resonance, as phaser pedals progressed over the years, they come out with different stages. So the Phase 90 pedal was known as a 4-stage phaser. And basically what that means is there's 4 different stages of delayed signal that basically modulate. This one allows us in its minimum value, the tweeze is basically a 4-stage phaser. But I can move it through to like 6, 8 and 12 stage phasing. So you can see there's quite a varied amount of control using both the resonance and the amount of stages that your pedal has got. So just to reiterate, if you want a classic Phase 90 type sound, you just basically turn the tweak and the tweeze all the way down to their minimum values. The mix will be up to 100%. And that's a classic Phase 90 sound. But you do have the additional control here of being able to add more stages of modulated signal as well as some resonance as well. So you'll find this on a lot of more modern day multi-effects pedals as well. They may even have a manual control in the same way as the flanger that we looked at previously. Some may even have different waveforms, panning. So there's quite a varied amount of control over a lot of more modern day phases. For me though, you can't beat the classic sound of the original MXR Phase 90.